Hi, my name is Dina, and I'm going to be reflecting on governance and management using 3 case studies. This presentation comprises of examining public sector organizations in the context of varying challenges, including changing cultural opportunities and political circumstances, advances in social knowledge, and sometimes dealing with ambiguous public expectations. Throughout this research, perhaps there were a few eminent themes, including public accountability and public engagement, and how these play a role in people's perception of the organization itself. So to start off, we're going to identify what governance and management actually are. There are many varying definitions and analogies explaining these phenomena. So after a bit of research, I found some fairly simplistic, albeit perhaps excessively two-dimensional definitions, and they are as follows. Governance is the exercise of complete leadership, while management is the exercise of business and operational leadership. So an analogy that I could think of is the governor is the person who is like an engineer who synthesizes ideas and designs the ideas that will come through. Meanwhile, the management or the manager is responsible for realizing the ideas via operational leadership and fulfillment. So how are they really different? Well, directors are not delegated individual authority, rather they exercise their functions and formulate their decisions collectively as a group. Managers, on the other hand, usually have delegated decision-making authority and individual responsibility. Some decision-making authority, however, may be assigned to a management team. And another way to look at it is that corporate governance is poorly understood by the public at large, while business management is recognized as an academic sort of discipline. So how are they really changing? Well, personally, I believe that they're quintessentially social constructs, and they change and evolve just as we change and evolve as human beings. So we'll start off by analyzing the Ministry of Social Development, or MSD, is arrangements for governance and management, and then later on we'll look at the Asociación Chilena de Seguridad, or ACHS. After that, we'll be looking at the Sydney Cross City Tunnel case study. So this week we're going to start off with looking at the Ministry of Social Development. The Ministry of Social Development is a public benefit entity. It's New Zealand's largest government agency in 2006. It combines the functions of the Ministry of Social Policy and the Department of Work and Income. Some of its objectives include getting people off of benefits and by that bettering their lives, and also providing social protection and investment for people in difficulty by reducing long-term welfare dependence and support vulnerable children. Following reading the case, reflection regarding the governance and management arrangements learned from the Ministry of Social Development of the New Zealand governments. We will start with the governance arrangements. For the governance arrangements that were inherent in the case study, there was what it seems to be a democratic structure. First line, staff were encouraged to contribute to decision making, and the CEO, Peter Hughes, who runs about 3 sectors, policy, service delivery, and corporate governance and rate. Peter Hughes brings forth ideas but cannot really implement them without permission from other people, including Patricia in the case study and the government as well, because the government allocates funding according to political values and government votes, which requires approval from the parliament. Taxpayers funded, meaning, you know, each and every one of us really has plays a hand in this role. Reporting was based on quantitative outputs, running the world's most customer service focused welfare agency. Meanwhile, the management arrangements that existed include a remodeled management model, which seeks to move the welfare system from a passive income transfer model where you know, money goes in and it gets distributed to people and that's it, to an active investing in people approach, modern bureaucracy style, which is something that we've looked at in the past, whereby you'd be managing for outcomes rather than outputs. The management was involved in decision making and encouraged to implement their own system. It was divided into regional divisions who managed their own areas. Feedback and suggestions from employees on ground level was passed on, and full delegation for the frontline staff to the solution of the problem. Moreover, there were some interactions between the management and governance arrangements that existed within the Ministry of Social Development. These include that the governing body interacted with the community links to ensure their objectives are really being met. In the Ministry of Social Development, there was a system where you link the public with the service they require. And personally, I had some experience with this, working with a charity organization that stands up for women against domestic violence. The Ministry of Social Development recently funded a self-defense course that the charity then made available to their staff and even the domestic violence victims. So that's an example of how the connection happens between the public and the services that they require. There was an integration of policy delivery and service delivery cluster within the very case study. So some personal observations that I got from the Ministry of Social Development case was that in the case study there was a notable shift towards modern bureaucracy, in that there was a shift from a focus on outputs and a movement towards accounting for outcomes. This possesses, of course, somewhat of a difficulty in measuring non-financial outcomes, as they're not as easily quantifiable. Due to the lack of centralized structure, accountability systems implemented were rather more informal, and new training helped focus on clients' overall needs and barriers to employment, which was important. Overall, there were challenges that the Ministry of Social Development encountered, including, some accounting activities such as funding and budgeting and what reasonably should go where. Hence, there was a lot of asking for feedback and quite a democratic structure that facilitated for these decisions to benefit all. Last week we looked at the Ministry of Social Development, and this week we'll be looking at the Asociación Chilena de Seguridad, or the ACHS for short. So firstly, what is the ACHS? The ACHS is a private non-profit organization which was created on November 13th, 1957. It is the largest healthcare provider for occupational accidents and work-related illness in Chile. The ACHS undertook prevention of occupational accidents and work-related illnesses. It provided medical attention should such accidents or illnesses occur, and rehabilitation when necessary. So again, we're going to study the governance and management arrangements in place for the ACHS. So the ACHS is a non-governmental organization, so it is privately funded. The ACHS has a board of directors made up of 6 members, 3 that are voted on, and 3 employers who made overall policies. It is a top-down sort of approach, which is dependent on the chairman. And now, management arrangements. It is run by Herman, which is the CEO and chairman, who has been there since the genesis of the ACHS. He has a vertical leadership style, and basically the governing levels instruct managers, and management then implements the decisions that are made by the board. With regards to the interactions that occur between management and the governance, crossovers exist as the CEO had vast knowledge about operations. Don Eugenio and Eduardo work as a team and create the strategy when they implement it. There is government intervention via legislation creation. So the government, what they did is they created a law for all companies to be enrolled with a health organization, and that had implications for the ACHS. And another interaction would just be that there was a vertical association between governance and management. So some personal observations that I had. The board had an unusual structure where there was 3 directors elected by business people, and the other 3 were selected by the workers as an unorthodox attempt at having both parties' interests represented on the board. The governance steers management towards a budgeting goal of 6% on revenues. So that is how accounting is involved as an activity within the ACHS. And it seems that a lot of the issues that they experience exhibit a short-term versus long-term focus. There were a number of issues inherent in this case, including political issues such as not enough government intervention, and social issues such as having the ability to choose their clients based on social class, and cultural issues such as staff could become too comfortable where they are, as they are not likely to lose their job. Furthermore, macroeconomics issues such as government focus on profits a lot more than the people. For example, in last week's case, the Ministry of Social Development, where there was a lot more focus on the people rather than the profits, as it is with the ACHS. And now we're moving on towards the Sydney Cross-City Tunnel, or the SCCT for short. The SCCT is a private finance project which will revert back to public ownership in 2030. The Cross-City Tunnel is 2.1 kilometers long tunnel in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. The primary objectives of the CCT project was to relieve traffic congestion in central Sydney by bypassing 18 to 16 set of westbound traffic lights on the old routes. It is also made to improve the reliability of public transport and provide a safer environment and improved amenities to vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. It is also there to provide a better air quality and better traffic noise levels. It is also there to improve travel times. An estimated 20 minutes saved during peak hours was reported. This is the last case study that we'll be studying for the governance and management arrangements that are in place. So first of all, we're going to start with governance arrangements. The New South Wales government dictates the wants, what they would like to occur, and then that will eventuate into reality. The CKI board dictated the company's vision and mission. In 2006, the government in charge of the New South Wales government took public-private partnership of the project. And now for the management arrangements. The CKI manages the project, providing day-to-day direction and planning. There is a fully planned governance between public and private sector, joint management and AG decisions to private or public funding. As for interactions or crossovers between management and governance, it looks like there was a crossover between management and governance, as CKI are the ones who also provide governance. And then there was an emergence of multiple groups making decisions so that the New South Wales government decided how they tackled these issues. As for personal observations, after some research, I found an article that said in early 2002, a year before construction began, transport planner Michelle was quoted in local newspapers saying that the tunnel would not reach its traffic targets. So when I found this out, I thought it was odd that the construction continued despite the transport planner advice. So obviously there was an assessing project risk issue inherent. It is true that the people are represented by the government they vote for, but it seems to be a lot of autocracy happening within this project. Decisions and actions centralized around profits, which is why the toll was too high, and people had to pursue other options, and public opinion was kind of veered towards sale of the tunnel. All in all, from this case study, I thought it was disappointing that the public opinion wasn't obtained before construction, and I think a lot of money could have been saved had this action taken place before any of the resulting consequences unraveled. So to conclude, what I realized after reading through the case studies was that governance and management weren't quite as simple as the definitions that I came across in the beginning of my study until now. But furthermore, governance and management, they encompass many themes that are needed for the organization to at least consider. For example, with the Sydney Cross City Tunnel, the public opinion wasn't considered before initiating the project, and even when the planner suggested that, look, you know, it wasn't going to reach the results that were forecasted. From that point on, there was a continuity that wasn't necessary, and there was a lot of money that was lost that wasn't necessary. All of this highlighting that, look, you know, visibility and accountability are really important when it comes to governance and management. Public sector accounting has consequences for us all in our day-to-day lives, and these cases really emphasize that very fact.